most people finance this work? They bootstrap it. They do it all by themselves. They do it with their family. What we used to say is family, friends, and fools. They figure out who they can get the money from, and they make it happen. Let's talk a little bit about money. Some of you, especially my MBA friends, are going to know this, but some other folks, it's going to be new to them. So I'll just take a second to talk about debt versus equity. So debt gets paid back first before any dividends get paid out. It's secured by assets. So that's the company, whatever your personal assets may be, maybe your parents' assets. And once debt is repaid with interest, the lender doesn't get anything. That's debt. We're all familiar with debt. Equity never has to be quote unquote repaid. You keep on paying forever. If you have an investor, it's basically a partner, and there are different equity portions, but they're in it for the long haul. They are working with you. You've all seen Dragon's Den. You've all seen how they make equity investments, how they're there for the long term. It's not just their money that's important. It's their connections. It's their access to customers. It's their access to distribution chains. It's all of that kind of stuff that enables them to make those kind of deals. So here's a little lesson that my colleague Carrie Golden put together for us. So let's just say you want to develop a mobile app. So you need $40K to build and market it. You get a grant for $10K. So you need to raise $30. Okay, app doesn't go so well. You only make a profit of $10K. What happens in that situation? If it's a loan, the lender loses $20. They gave you $30. You don't get anything, and now you owe them the difference, which is the $20. But in an equity situation, the partner loses $25 because they're now splitting the $10, so they get $5 back, so they're losing $25, and you get $5. It becomes a featured app. You do a little bit better, you make $30K, so the lender is even and you don't make any money. But in an equity situation, the partner loses $15K and you make $15K. Right? We're talking 50-50 equity partner in this case. And let's go to the top of the charts. Congratulations, you are it. You made $200K. So the lender just gets paid back, and you make the difference of $170. In the equity situation, the partner makes $70, and you make $100. So as you are thinking about what kind of financing you may accept or you may be looking for, think about this. Think about what the options are and what kind of situation you're going to be in depending on how successful your product is. And this is all going to be online, right? Because if you're like me, you might have to look at this more than once, and other people are like, duh, it's so easy. But just want to leave it out there for you. What we see a lot of is lifestyle businesses. I certainly find there's a ton of people now who are now yoga practitioners, and now they're going to open yoga studios or whatever the particular lifestyle situation is. And this is something that's sometimes a hobby of yours, but you get pretty passionate about it. That's what's happening there. Small and medium enterprises are the engine of our economy. 98% of owner-operated businesses are small or medium enterprises. And places like the city of Toronto have small business centers, and you can go and find out almost everything you need to know there. Mars is better suited for the high-growth companies. We are here to work with technology companies that have a big path to success, like Hootsuite, which was founded in 2008. It's now got almost 1,000 employees, 10 million plus users. They're really soaring. And what we find is that the study estimates there's about 13,000 high-growth companies in Canada, and we're trying to find them, which is the next BlackBerry that will keep on being the next BlackBerry. There is also a whole other space that's emerging that I find around shared services. We talked about co-working spaces. But there's also shared services for a lot of these SMEs. Just say, for example, you're a specialist in human resources. They can't afford to hire an HR specialist, so maybe you could provide that service to them. There's a lot of technology groups that are doing that. Maybe the accountants in the room could do that. They could do the financial services for people, so these SMEs do not have to hire all the services that generally they can't afford. Another business model to think about. How do most people finance this work? They bootstrap it. They do it all by themselves. They do it with their family. What we used to say is family, friends, and fools. They figure out who they can get the money from, and they make it happen. Danger, 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 credit cards. Seems kind of easy, and lots of times that's what you're tempted to do because you believe in your product. But as I said to you at the beginning, it's way more important you fall in love with the problem and not your solution. But bootstrapping, pulling it up, doing it yourself is the way most folks go. You heard at the very beginning in the video from Indiegogo around crowdfunding, and she gave you some really good tips for fundraising success in the crowdfunding era. Anybody heard of Kiva? Okay, who can tell me what Kiva is? I have a final prize. Very good. And so it helps entrepreneurs in developing countries. So come get your book. It's the Meat of Weeds, the story of the Kielburgers and how they made some success. May you have equally great success. And so Kiva is like an early crowdfunding platform. They've been around 10 years. This is their 10th anniversary. And they've raised, through people like me giving them $25 and so on, so they've raised $774 million over the past 10 years for entrepreneurs in developing nations. Crowdfunding. I don't know, you may decide, I think it's done, I think it's still beginning, but it's something to look at as a way to raise money. And then there's a ton of services like Grant Connect that will link you into granting programs. And there's many other places like the Mars Entrepreneurs Toolkit that also has those kind of resources. So most of the time we think about going to banks and getting a loan, but you have to have something that they can use as collateral. Something to think about. Anybody heard of Futurepreneur? Futurepreneur gives loans to businesses starting by young people. And young people they now define as 18 to 39. I figure the older the baby boomers get, the older young is, right? I think that's what's happening there. So 39, so that's great. So if you're in that space, they have loan programs there for you, and they'll also provide you with mentorship to help make your program more successful. BDC, the Business Development Bank of Canada, is just about supporting entrepreneurs. We have the funding portal here at Mars that we can get access to for you and on your behalf, and you can just look at it. It's a way to find out about funding sources. And then, of course, the Mars Entrepreneurs Toolkit, which has tons and tons and tons of resources. And again, this is all going to be available for you to look at. Who knows what the turkey principle is? Essentially what it means is when you're bootstrapping and you borrow from family and friends, remember that one day you will have to have turkey with them. And can you take this really wonderfully happy family and say, uh-oh, the mother or the father lost all the money of the grandfather? Can you look people in the eye? Can you sit around the table with them knowing that you lost their money? If you believe so much in your product that you think that you're going to be successful because you're solving a real need and you're solving a real problem, you've got to be prepared for that. So when you think about how you're going to get this money, think about having turkey. The other thing I wanted to talk about is a couple of other key sources of financing that may be an option for you. If you know a bunch of high net worth individuals, then congratulations. Maybe there's an angel investor in that midst. Maybe there's someone who believes in investing in you and they've got the financial resources to make it happen. We have a national angel capital organization, for example. We have the Canadian Venture Capital Association down at the bottom. Venture capital is different. This is actually funds like pension funds that would be available to invest in you. Good luck getting money out of pension funds. It's really hard to do as a startup, but it's an option. And if you are positioned for growth, this may be the kind of funding you're looking for. And then in the middle, you will find a ton of accelerator programs. At Mars, we even have one in the social impact space called Impact 8. These are programs that sometimes you get funding to participate in, or at least you can compete for funding. So again, a whole range of places where you can get some of that. This is just a couple of select examples from our toolkit for proof of principle, so early stage funding. I'll just highlight in the first group, the second from the bottom, it's OCE, which is the Ontario Centres of Excellence that works very closely with Mars on some opportunities. So then there's NRC IRAP, which is another funding source, and then the final one is a series of foundations that will support charities, and nonprofits. Again, this will all be available for you, and I'm going to be around if you have any questions on how to access any of these. Then there's social finance, which is going beyond donations to mobilize private capital for public good. So what would happen again, historically, I'd reach into my pocket, I'd make a donation, say to sick kids, because I really believe in their work. I'd reach into my other pocket and I'd make an investment because I want to profit maximize. What people are doing is saying, how do I bring those two hands together? How can I invest for social and financial return? And there's a whole field of social finance or impact investing that's opening up. And this is of course, is some of our friends in the UK who are leading this work. And we're also pleased to be joined on the G7 Task Force on Social Finance, where Mars is representing Canada. And we have, of course, our friends from Australia there as well. So people are thinking differently about how they invest. And this is particularly relevant in the intergenerational transfer of wealth that is coming down the pipeline. The next generation is very interested in not only profit maximizing, but thinking about how they can get a social or environmental return on their funding. And so Mars has set up something called the SVX, which stands for Social Venture Connection, because we couldn't use the word exchange because it's a whole big regulatory thing, but it's Social Venture Connection, and it's a matching platform. My colleague who started it calls it eHarmony for impact investing. So looking at social ventures and building the capacity there, looking at impact investors and building the capacity there, and bringing the two together on the SVX. And this is an example of an organization called Pathways to Education that had a social return on investment analysis done on their work, which is to help kids stay in school longer. And it started in the Regent Park area. What they found out was that they were able to double the high school graduation rates, and for every dollar invested in their program, they saved $24 in the system. Well, what does that mean? It means people stayed out of prison. It means people had children later in life. It means that they were able to quantify some of the social costs of what the high school dropout rate was causing. They actually saw a 300% increase in university or college attendance with their work. So there are methods and ways for you to demonstrate your impact, and a lot of work is happening in this space. The best piece of advice I could give anyone is to spend your time working on whatever you are passionate about in life. Richard Branson is one of the funders of the Center for Impact Investing here at Mars. And if I had one piece of advice I could give you, it would be similar. If you have not found something that you want to work on that you're passionate about, don't do it. It's really hard, and it's a slog. And if you don't love it, find something else.